Good morning. It is Friday, October 10th, 2014. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Islamic State fighters seize more than a third of the Syrian border town of Kobani as U.S.-led airstrikes fail to halt their advance and Turkish forces nearby look on without intervening. More and more airports around the world are beginning screening procedures against Ebola, while officials in the United States define the virus as the biggest challenge since HIV. And later on the show, we will hear all about the 2014 Nobel Prize winners, and also a look ahead to the Peace Prize winner today. Good morning, I am Yael Avi, and we begin with our main topic of the day. Islamic State organization fighters seized more than a third of the Syrian border town of Kobani as U.S.-led airstrikes failed to halt their advance and Turkish forces nearby look on without intervening. Officials in Ankara also continue to debate whether to take an active role in the fight against ISIS. Rival factions stirred old enmities. The country was rocked by explosive clashes in more than 20 cities as Kurds protested against the government's perceived inaction over the plight of those living in the Kurdish city of Kobani, just a few miles inside Syrian territory. We're joined in studio by Channel 2 Senior Foreign Affairs Editor Arad Nir. Arad, good morning to you.
Good morning, yes.
And before we break this down, let's take a look at the following recap of events from Kobani.
Video clips uploaded to a social media website purport to show Arabic Free Syrian Rebel Army fighters as they take position and target Islamic State militant group sites in the western neighborhood of Kobani. The commander of Kobani's heavily outgunned Kurdish defenders said IS controlled a slightly smaller area. However, he acknowledged that the militants had made major gains in the culmination of a 3-week battle. U.S. President Barack Obama on Wednesday met with senior military officials at the Pentagon to discuss the military mission to defeat IS in Syria and Iraq. The U.S. military announced that 6 airstrikes had been launched to try to keep the town of Kobani from falling into IS hands.
This is not something that is going to be solved overnight. The good news is that there is a broad-based consensus, not just in the region, but among nations of the world, that ISIL is a threat to world peace, security, and order, that their barbaric behavior has to be dealt with.
Establishing a no-fly zone or a safe zone inside Syria, proposals Turkey has been advocating to a U.S.-led coalition against IS, has apparently not been discussed by NATO.
I believe there is no simple and straightforward ways out of the problems we are seeing in Syria and around Kobani these days. It has not been on the table of any NATO discussions yet, and it's not an issue which is discussed in NATO.
Explosions continue to rock Kobani as a monitoring group says IS militants have seized more than a third of the besieged border town. Turkey has complained that the United States is giving only token support through airstrikes, while Turkish tanks sent to the frontier are looking on, but doing nothing to defend the town.
We're also joined from Jerusalem by recently back from Erbil in Iraq, Russia Today Middle East Bureau Chief Paula Sleer. Paula, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And of course, Rodney, in the studio to the two of you. This is what Secretary of State John Kerry had to say yesterday about all the arguments around the world about the lack of assistance to the people of Kobani, who have been fighting and battling against ISIL fighters for the past several days. Let's take a look.
Notwithstanding the crisis in Kobani, the original targets of our efforts have been the command and control centers, the infrastructure. We're trying to deprive the ISIL of the overall ability to wage this, not just in Kobani, but throughout Syria and into Iraq.
Secretary of State John Kerry yesterday, he also said that people have to remember that that the main objective of the coalition airstrike airstrikes are not Kobani. Paula Sleer on the phone recently back from Erbil in Iraq, where also the coalition airstrikes have been going on. Is there a sense that people on the ground in Iraq, for example, have an idea what the strategy is?
No, there's no sense of that at all. I mean, just about everybody I was speaking to was a little bit upset about these recent remarks from the United States, because they certainly do believe that the airstrikes are making a difference. Of course, the concern is that Turkey is playing a double game. On the one hand, you have the Turks turning a blind eye to the militants that are crossing the Turkish border to infiltrate either Syrian or Iraqi territory, and there are also reports that Turkey is treating militants in its hospitals. On the other hand, you have these comments coming out of Ankara that in whatever capacity it's prepared to be part of an international campaign, but not actually take action on its own. The feeling on the ground amongst the Kurdish fighters I was talking to was that the airstrikes are extremely helpful. There is, of course, still concern that there will be a massacre inside Kobani if the United States-led campaign doesn't actually step up. And most of the people I was talking to believe that the U.S. is just dragging its feet, and they really want to see more airstrikes happening that they are certain will help prevent massacres happening in Kobani and the Islamic State from taking over more territory there.
Right. Arad Nir, senior foreign affairs editor for Channel 2, speaking of, the reports of a possible massacre, there was a number thrown out yesterday that if the fighting in Kobani continues, 5,000 people may die. This is not good for Erdogan, is it? Because they're mostly Kurds, and it seems like this is already rocking Turkey from within. Why is Turkey not acting? It's on its border.
This is a game of interests, as usual, in regional politics, local politics, international politics. Erdogan's main concern is Bashar al-Assad. He hates him more than anything else. Now, let's see who is fighting ISIL fighters in Kobane. It's only Kurdish fighters. It's Syrian Kurds. The Syrian Kurds are fighting ISIL because they have an agreement with Assad that he does not have to care about what's going on up north in this Kurdish region of Syria. He can relax his efforts in this region and concentrate in other regions of Syria. So Erdogan sees the Kurds that are fighting ISIS in Kobane as the allies of Assad. This is why he is not willing to fight them, to help them, and he's not willing to fight ISIS over there. And in general, he fears ISIS less than he wants Assad out. So all the preconditions or the pretext, whatever you want to call it, that the Turkish government puts on the table in order to help the coalition, not only the Kurds in Kobani, in order to help the coalition, are set firstly to oust Assad. That's his first priority. Once Erdogan is convinced that the coalition and the Americans and the other members of the coalition, the NATO organization is bound to oust Assad,
which on theory probably will not happen.
It won't happen. It will not happen. This is why all these assumptions that Turkey is about to join the coalition, that Turkey is about to help Kobane, these are all just assumptions which have got no
basis. But speaking of that, and Paula, you're back from where we're basically Kurds again. It's a different region where Kurds are fighting themselves against ISIL fighters. But when the United States says something in the lines of Kobani is not the main strategy of this. How does it bode for the people on the ground there? Obviously, coalition airstrikes are helping, but this is the message. If there's a massacre about to happen in Kobani, and airstrikes are not stopping it, what message does this send to the Kurdish fighters on the ground, be it in Syria or in Iraq?
Well, it certainly sends a not particularly positive message, and that's really the sense I'm getting from those that I was talking to on the ground. You have already a third of Syria that is in the hands of ISIS, and the Kurdish fighters across the board in Iraq have repeatedly told me that it is because of the airstrikes that where I was primarily was able to see the Kurdish fighters on the offensive. So for them, the airstrikes are of major importance. Without it, they certainly feel that, particularly because they don't have the kind of sophisticated weaponry that ISIS has, they wouldn't be able to make any kind of advances. I want to make the point that when I was talking with the Iraqi Kurds, I was able to cross over the border into Syria and meet with the Syrian Kurds, but I was told by the Kurdish Regional Council to keep this very, very quiet. that they don't want it to come out too much, that the Kurds in Iraq and the Kurds in Syria are fighting together. You have your Syrian Kurds who are known as the YPG and the YPG. I also want to make the point that, following on from what Arad said, I think that very much for Erdogan, by eliminating ISIS and arming the Kurds, he is concerned that he'll give the Kurds more power to try and get independence. If you just look at the figures, at least a third of the Turkish population is estimated to be Kurds. So we're looking at some 70 million people. And according to recent estimates, the Kurds will make half of the Turkish population in 2025. So for Erdogan, any kind of option of splitting the Turkish territory and saying goodbye to territories that Turkey considers their own is something certainly that he's not going to be supportive of. Also, he is trying, and this is what many people were telling me, to recreate the Ottoman Empire. And so he would be considered as a traitor by the Sunni Arabs who say that he chose the Kurds over the Arabs, if indeed he is seen to come to the forefront in terms of assisting the Kurds in any way.
Right. Is he trying to create the Ottoman Empire?
Well,
I've heard it before as well.
He's considered a neo-Ottomanist. You know,
Right.
he is an Ottomanist by his very nature. He's trying to regain the Ottoman influence.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that he's trying to gain the Ottoman
obviously.
territories.
Yeah.
That's his point of view. But coming back to the fight on the ground, it's quite fascinating that the Syrian Kurds have been visiting. The leader visited Ankara last weekend, asked for help, asked for allowance to move forces through Turkish territory,
right,
in order to help the fighters in Kobani, and he doesn't let them do this. On the other hand, Turkey is establishing very good relationships based mainly on economy and trade and commerce with the Kurdish entity in Iraq. Now, they are willing to accept this Turkish entity or independent entity in northern Iraq, but they won't let this happen in northern Syria because they are worried that the next chunk that they will bite will be out of Turkey.
Right.
So this is why he's very reluctant, and his set of interests is very complicated. Mind you, in the last couple of days, dozens of Kurds were killed in Turkey, demonstrating against this reluctancy of Erdogan to help their brothers in the south, in northern Syria, and yet thousands of Turkish Kurds are crossing the border in order to help and fight over in Kobani. So the situation is extremely complicated. The American airstrikes or the coalition airstrikes around Kobani does not really help the troops on the ground. It may hasten or slow a little bit the advancement of the Islamic State forces, but they seem to be gaining ground on a daily basis.
It seems pretty obvious several days into this battle that 2/3 of Kobani is already in the hands of the Islamic State organization fighters. And that to you, Paula, if, all these, the criticism to Erdogan from the West seems to be like this, and again, a calculated attempt by the coalition, by the United States, by the West, to actually push Erdogan into fighting this battle. I mean, can this be fought without, can the coalition forces fight ISIS without Turkey?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, certainly the Turks push that line and say, as we've already mentioned, that they want to be part of any coalition and they don't want to be going it alone. Whether or not they can fight it without the Turks, I'm not 100% sure. It's certainly true what you say, that the Pentagon itself has been pointing out that the airstrikes alone cannot liberate Kobani and deal with the situation on the ground. There has been a lot of that kind of rhetoric coming from the United States, whether it's laying the ground for it being able to withdraw or present the fight without Turkey, or whether it's laying the ground so that it doesn't step up the airstrikes is anyone's guess. The situation on the ground is that you have these Kurdish fighters that are still outgunned. You have the Islamic State that is surrounding Kobani by three sides. Turkey has actually positioned forces on the city's fourth side at the Turkish border. So that is how the situation looks right now. But certainly the airstrikes, and this has been the message coming from the United States, are not able to completely destroy ISIS, despite the fact that on the ground they certainly are helping.
Right. Paula Slier, thank you. Rodney, last question to you. that's something I'm wondering, because there's a report I read yesterday about it. Now there are sort of voices coming out of the United States, limited action, meaning, some troops on the ground. Is the United States ready for another involvement like that? Because we know it's not going to be limited action. I mean, this seems to be spreading all over the place.
I'm not sure that the United States is ready for that. Some Israeli intelligence sources have told me recently that there is an imminent attack on American and or European targets by ISIS fighters. Once this happens, then Europe and America will be willing to be engaged in a more deeper operation
having the ability
on
to
the
sell
ground.
It, so to speak. It's a horrible thing to say to
Up
the
until
people.
this happens, unfortunately, they won't be able to do a prophylactic operation in order to avoid it from happening.
Indeed, so Rodney, thank you for joining us on this subject. Do stay for the chat we're going to have now. On to our next topic. Following the death of the first U.S. patient that was diagnosed with Ebola in Texas and the nurse infected with the virus in Spain, taking a turn for the worse, airports around the globe are beefing up screening for people from affected nations. And U.S. officials are talking about it as the biggest challenge since AIDS. We are joined in studio by Dr. Leslie Lobel from the Faculty of Health Sciences at the Ben-Gurion University. Good morning to you.
Thank you.
And of course, we still have Rodney with us, Senior Foreign Affairs Editor for Channel 2. Again, over the weekend, and I have to say this, I'm a mother, so anything like this freaks me out. But that's, a moment of honesty. Over the weekend, though, over the holiday here in Israel, many reports of another person diagnosed in Europe, another person, people quarantined in France. The Americans seem to be very in tune in order to try and fight this spread of Ebola from Africa. John Kerry had several things to say over the course of the last few days about the need for every nation, or the need for the world, to try and combat the threat and of Ebola. And let's take a look at what he had to say.
Here this morning to make an urgent plea to countries in the world to step up even further. While we are making progress, we are not where we can say that we need to be. And there are additional needs that have to be met in order for the global community to be able to properly respond to this challenge and to make sure that we protect people in all of our countries.
Well, Dr. Lobel, this seems to be gaining a lot of traction. It's been leading the news, actually, in every news outlet has been leading with Ebola in the last 3 days. Should we be overly concerned this week because it has hit Europe, it has gotten to, another continent?
Well, I think, I think people forget that there were travelers in the past with Ebola and Marburg that have come back to Europe and the United States. They
Really?
got better, yes.
Okay.
This has happened in the past. They were basically just traveling to Africa. They came back with the virus, and they actually got better. So I don't think this is a surprise right now. I think the biggest problem is that there's very little screening at airports around the world.
But I mean, when we're talking about numbers such as, because people are talking about this, granted, in slow news weeks, we tend to invent news as journalists there, I've said it. But, there are 4,000 people dead in West Africa.
Right.
And there seems to be that the outbreak there seems to be that there's a difficulty to contain it. Isn't that the case?
That's true. That's because, well, in West Africa, the governments have very little control over their populations. I think in the developed world, it's a lot different.
But in terms of medically, you're saying that the virus is is the same as it has been over the course of the last, decades, and nothing's going to happen in Europe?
Well, the ecosystem of the virus is likely limited right now. In other words, when you talk about a virus...
Explain what that means, yeah.
Well, when you talk about a virus lives in what we call an ecosystem, in nature. If it's not in a human, it's got to be somewhere else.
Okay.
Now, the one big problem about Ebola virus is we do not understand that other thing. Nobody really knows where it exists in nature. People say it's in bats. With Marburg virus, it's clear that it's in bats.
Ebola is not airborne.
It's
we
not,
don't know.
It's not normally airborne. It is. People do get infected by close contact with bodily fluids.
No.
It's not like influenza virus, and it's unlikely to become an airborne virus, at least in the near future. But still, it is highly infectious, and the number of viral particles you need to get infected is very low. And so that's why you have to be extremely careful.
Before we continue in what this means, why does it kill so fast?
Well, it generally, first of all, it attacks the circulatory system. In general, the virulence of a virus is directly related to how fast it replicates or how fast its life cycle is, and it's a very fast life cycle. So those two things combined, destroying your circulatory system very rapidly, it doesn't give your immune system a chance to really catch up. Okay. And that's what we find in people who don't survive. They generally have, you see no immunity. People who survive, you do see immunity.
Okay, but before we continue, and this notion that the people in Europe are, are scared, not as scared as the United States. Spain, as we mentioned, there's a nurse there that was diagnosed last week, and basically right now has taken a turn to the worse. In Spain, this is what the authorities had to say about the battle against the spread of Ebola.
Today we have heard some news. The investigation has not concluded, but it is important to carry that out. And finally, there is something that I would like to put forward to the public. As in any facet of life, I think it is very important to listen to the people who have knowledge of any given matter. Spain has professionals in the health sector, unlike any other country in the world. In any country of the world, it is known that Spain may have faults in many areas, but in terms of health, you all should be certain that we have the top professionals. We should listen to them, and what the administration has to do is give them the tools they require, resolve whatever problems they may have if we are able to do so. But I insist, follow the criteria set forth by those who have knowledge and who say they have sufficient knowledge on the matter. I insist that this is very important.
When in Spain the authorities are speaking about following the criteria, okay, I feel like we're not being told what the criteria is. In the United States, for example, we spoke in Dallas to a woman who was living there a few days before the Ebola patient passed away, well, didn't survive. She said that she feels that nobody's really telling people what to do, what the precautions are, that they're getting information from the media, which is a frightening notion.
Yeah, that's the main thing, Yael. You started this talk by saying that you are a concerned mother.
Yes.
Now, you are not only a concerned mother, you are also a professional journalist. So let's combine the two and try to extract some air out of this hot balloon we call Ebola. Now, we know this deadly condition, this deadly disease, this deadly virus for about 40 years now, since it was first discovered in the Ebola Valley in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zaire. Now, for 4 decades, it has been an exotic African disease. It hit mainly Africans, and the world did not care. The Western world did not invest any efforts, any budgets in studying this virus, in building up a containment system, how to fight it and how to deal with it. Now, let me relax you by now and say now, when it reaches the Western world, these efforts will be provided, and I'm not talking about a cure, but a systematic method of dealing with the disease is about to be published soon enough, and the funds will be found to deal with it. So this is the first thing. Secondly, as I said, you are a journalist, we are journalists, we are professional journalists, and we know that it's such a disease which is extremely deadly. It deals with hemorrhages, lots of blood, quick death. It causes headlines, it causes hysteria. The media pumps it up, and the politicians, even the professional politicians and even the healthcare politicians, they
have an invested stake in trying to make that their case.
Let's go. They surf on this wave of interest in order to get their own gains. So if we try and combine our first talk about what's going on with ISIS and this thing of Ebola, it's a game of interest. Now, I don't know if I'll relax you by now, but I'm sure that the professional doctor here with us in the studio will agree with me that the flu that I'm just recovering of at the moment is probably much more dangerous to more people around than the Ebola virus.
And, I mean, is that the case? That's something that we're forgetting, Dr. Lober, that more people die from influenza?
That's true. That's true. Well, many more people, tens of thousands of people die a year, just in the United States alone from influenza every year. And I think the bigger problem is that not only have we not done anything about Ebola for 40 years, but we thought that we had conquered all of viral disease back in the late 60s, early 70s. And we focused then on cancer and other important diseases. Right. But as I like to say, viruses don't sleep. They kept evolving, they kept mutating, and now they're getting ahead of us, and we're behind the curve. And so now we need to rebuild a lot of capacity that we've lost.
In order to do this, allow me to be cynical, we need enough white men affected with the viruses in order to get the funds to make the studies.
If the Ebola virus will kill, I'm going to say it, enough white people, then maybe there will be more interest. Because we're looking at the numbers in West Africa, and they're staggering. This latest outbreak, 3,865 West Africans already dead. But we're talking about this, and all three of us are talking about this because the headlines over the course of the last 2 days said Spain, France, and the United States, rather than West Africa.
But it's still a handful, isn't it?
It's a handful.
Two handful.
Yeah,
not enough.
Very few.
Not enough. Yeah.
Not enough in order to make the battle. But as we said, you said the word outbreak, and I think we're all speaking about it because it was once a Hollywood movie. So
that's it. It's good for Hollywood movies. It's good for headlines.
Yeah.
But the facts are a bit different.
Yes. Well, let's hope, let's hope, with all due respect, that, as you said, Dr. Lober, the virus will be now actually tackled in a way of how to combat it around the world, rather just there. Thank you both for joining me this morning, Dr. Lebel, and of course, Arad Nir. And when we get back, of course, Hamas has welcomed a delegation, actually the Prime Minister of the Fatah-led government of the Palestinian Authority, into Gaza. This is the first time and a major step in the road to the unity government of the Palestinians surviving. We'll tell you all about it when we get back. Of course, before that, let's take another look at the morning headlines of today. Good morning. I-24 News Morning Edition, where you should be on this October 10th, 2014, because this is the only place where Anthony Grant will tell you everything you missed while scanning the headlines, all the other news. Anthony Grant.
Good morning again.
Yes.
Yes.
What did we miss?
Well, this is a big headline, which I actually missed at first, but let's just go to it. The Times of Israel notes that the Palestinian Unity Government seeks to signal that aid won't go to Hamas, and this was following, of course, on yesterday's meeting in Gaza of the Hamas-Fatah so-called Unity Government, marking, just want to say, the end of more than 7 years of absolute Hamas control of the coastal territory, according to the article.
No, very true, and we're going to take a closer look at that, of course, in the next segment, because it is, it seems to be holding on. But yes, moving on.
So that, and moving on to New York City, where at LaGuardia Airport there was some interesting labor action yesterday. Plane cabin cleaners went on strike over Ebola concerns at what is, I think, America's one of the most busy airports in the country.
It's not one of the, definitely. And this is LaGuardia. No, interesting. And they went to strike because,
200 cabin cleaners, because they say they have they do not have sufficient protective apparatus in place for them to, when they're doing the cleaning of the planes.
Training, I'm assuming.
Training and equipment. They feel like regardless, the risk may be small, but they feel like they don't have the proper stuff to do their job, so they walked off.
If anybody's in the front line, it's cabin cleaners. I mean, it's bodily fluids that pass this disease from one person to another, highly contagious.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, mostly Delta planes were affected at this point. So for at least for that time frame, I'm not sure how clean those planes would have been. Again, and this is coming after, the U.S.
I'm not flying anywhere anytime soon.
I'm just saying. They're doing the temperature checks at 5 U.S. airports now, but people are saying it's not really going to be that effective. Now you have people walking off the job at the airport, so this is getting to be a bigger story.
And I think the element in it that makes it so interesting to me, I think it's the mass hysteria. I don't say, mass hysteria may be too harsh, but because we know so little about it and we're being told actually very little about it as well.
Yeah.
That people are freaking out, strike, stuff like that. We will see most likely more of that, I'm assuming, also around Europe.
So there's a lot going on with that. Also, have you heard about Super Typhoon Vangfang? Now you know.
Yeah.
This is no laughing matter.
Vangfang.
Have you seen this?
It sounds like actually, it sounds like a designer's name.
It sounds a lot better than that Hurricane Odette from a while
thank
back, or
you.
Odile, which
Odile. It was
Odile. Hurricane Odile in Baja.
In Baja, because Odette was taken.
Exactly.
Exactly. Right.
But this is a high-power name for a high-power storm, which looks like that from space.
Yikes, that's not good.
Not good. It's barreling towards
Talk about the eye of the storm.
Japan.
That's a major eye. That whenever you see something like that, because I used to cover weather on a regular basis in the States, that looks very bad. That means that it's actually
looks calm from space, but around Sunday or Monday, it's supposed to be hitting like Okinawa areas toward Japan. It's weakening, but it's still something like almost a Category 5 level strength.
Category 5. Super typhoon or hurricane Category 5. The only word I have for you on that is Katrina. Yeah, that was also a Category 5. Let's hope it weakens.
Yes, let's hope so. Financial storm brewing in Hong Kong around Hong Kong's chief executive Leung Chun-ying, who of course is a lot of people want him to step down.
Right.
Now he's embroiled in a financial scandal because of, an Australian newspaper, The Age, reported that he allegedly pocketed $6 million in, well, no longer secret fees from a listed Australian company in return for supporting its Asian business ambitions. So, not good timing for him.
No, not good timing, not good timing. Although there is something comforting to me always to see a corrupt politician exposed, I have to say. Not that usually that stops them, but still.
Yeah, I don't think this will stop him, but it's going to make the people who want him to step down, it's going to bolster their case.
To remind the viewers, Hong Kong, the place of the umbrella peaceful revolution, maybe they'll, now replace the umbrellas with something else, but who knows. Yes.
Anyway, they won't replace them with the Elgin marbles because that's now swirling in the headlines because of George Clooney's wife, Amal Alamuddin, who is taking up the case to represent the Greek government on the longest-running Parthenon scandal of all time.
Well, I have to say, good for the Greek.
Yeah. Now, let's just to back up a second. What are the Elgin marbles? These are the sculptures from the Parthenon in Athens that were basically plundered by British ambassadors.
The British stole?
They stole them. Yeah, this was basically going back to the early 19th century.
Colonial times.
The British ambassador did it, actually.
Nice.
Now, they do look nice in the British Museum.
I like that. Let's take it with us.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Basically.
Okay.
Greece has wanted them back for a long time. When you go to the Acropolis Museum in Athens, there is something obviously missing, which was that.
No, and I'm wondering, it's actually a fascinating point. What was the British argument over the course of the modern age, because we are in the 21st century already, to say, no, this stays here? Because they're Greek.
It's like finders keepers.
Really?
Yeah. So now you got to
imagine somebody coming to the Middle East. I'll give you a scenario. Ali Walker here with us, also senior Middle East analyst, coming to the Middle East saying, I like the Wailing Wall. Let me just take it with me. Yeah, okay.
Cut, snip, take.
Cut, and cue in World War III.
Yeah,
yes,
so that's going to be interesting to follow
and
in the British papers.
Actually, they have a great case now. They're great because they've got, one of the leading, most famous barristers in the world now representing them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really high profile. And she's flying into Athens, I think, next week to meet with the Prime Minister of Greece. So it's going to be moving forward, I think.
And next year, it's going to be a movie starring George Clooney. Yes.
Interesting. You never know. Yeah. Of course, we have to mention Patrick Modiano, the French novelist who won the Nobel Prize yesterday in Sweden. And this guy, very popular in France, but his work is not too well known outside of France. But Nazi occupation themes and from the French World War II, loss of identity, Jewishness are recurrent themes in his oeuvre, if I may say. And I think that with this high-profile prize, more of his work is now going to probably be translated into English, which is very nice to see.
Very much so. And we'll have we'll also have a more a round look of all the Nobel Prizes, including the upcoming Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize that will be announced today. Yes.
And also, Jewish Business News and other papers are reporting about an incident in France the other day. French protesters disrupted a screening of an Israeli documentary called Dancing in Jaffa. Now, this
a great documentary, by the way, if I may add.
Hila Medalia, I think I'm pronouncing it right, is the director. Now, she started to introduce the film and then was promptly heckled, and more bad stuff happened from anti-Israel protesters, and basically it does bear mentioning that Carpentras Carpentras is where this festival is happening, is in 1990, their Jewish cemetery was desecrated quite infamously. And so this is...
irrespective of one's, feelings towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which everybody's out of their own opinion, what's sad about this is this isn't a documentary about children coexisting, which is where we all want to get to
right
eventually.
here in Jaffa.
Which we want to get to coexistence and children being, innocent beings. And,
But when I read a headline like that, I have to say there is something uniquely French in the viciousness. I mean, they were throwing stink bombs, apparently.
Oh, nice.
People gathered outside. I mean, it was almost like the setup for a lynching, it seemed. And the fact that it took place in Carpentras, which is home to France's oldest Jewish synagogue. I mean, they need to work on their everything there.
And their everything.
They do.
Yes, this is to you, French.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. France,
Story in Boston on a nicer historical note. There was a time capsule found in the old State House.
From when?
It was actually 1901.
That's nice.
So
but that's old. That's 100 plus years.
Actually, this was the place from where they used to deliver anti-British speeches back in the day.
Nice.
So it was a site of...
Those British, they steal our statues.
Yeah, the British were not welcome in Boston after a certain point in time, as we know. They opened up this box yesterday. It was like a red copper box, but not actually revealing what they found in it just yet, as far as I know.
Really?
But it's kind of riveted the attention of people in Boston.
I have to say 113 years ago what people put in, because if you do a time capsule nowadays, it's just going to be filled with iPhones.
Yeah, an iPhone,
unpaid
parking tickets.
Yeah.
My unpaid parking tickets.
There you go. Tony Grand, thank you so much.
Thank
we'll
you.
see you again next hour. Stick with us in the studio lockdown.
See you.
On to our next topic, as Tony rightfully previewed, for the first time since Hamas took over Gaza in 2007, Palestinian Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah and several Palestinian Fatah ministers entered the Gaza Strip and called for Gaza to be rebuilt as top priority. We are, of course, joined in studio by I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Waqid. Ali, good morning to you. Before we break it down, let's take a look at that visit from yesterday.
The meeting aims to show the international community that a leadership united under the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority would preside over funds donated for reconstruction, approximately $4 billion. Thursday's meeting was the first in the besieged coastal territory and the first that its Gaza-based ministers could attend after Israel blocked their travel to the West Bank to be sworn in.
We put years of division behind us, and we took an essential step with the unity government to move forward and to put the international community and the great forces in front of their responsibilities for the reconstruction and the essential lifting of the unjust blockade.
The Prime Minister was to tour some of the areas worst hit by the 50-day war between Israel and Gaza militants in July and August, in which nearly 2,200 Palestinians were killed, along with about 73 on the Israeli side.
The massive destruction we saw in the Gaza Strip and the human suffering that our people experienced remind us of the size of responsibility of this government.
Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Malki said the meet aimed to show the international community that its donations to rebuild Gaza would be overseen by the Western-backed PA and would not fall into the hands of Gaza's militants. But the deal between the two sides has already seen setbacks, notably over the issue of who should pay the salaries of Hamas employees in Gaza after its own government disbanded.
Joined in studio by Ali Waqid, senior Middle East analyst for I-24 News. There was a sense, I have to say to you, during Protective Edge, or before Protective Edge, that it was actually in Israel's best interest if this unity government was not going to be carried on, but seems to be, in spite of all the predictions, because Hamas and Fatah, we don't need to, explain to our viewers, have not been getting along, to put it mildly, over the course of several years. But this is actually a good sign for that unity government. This is the first, time the unity government has actually sat down in Gaza, isn't it?
This is a good sign, maybe for Israel. I'm not sure for the Israeli government with the agenda that it is ruling. But this is not a secret, Yael, that this very friendly meeting between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority is targeting the conference of the donators in the coming days in Cairo, to send a message to the international community that the authority exercised on the ground in the Gaza Strip and the funds that will be raised in this conference will be managed by the Palestinian Authority and not by the Hamas. Now, this is what we know publicly. What were behind the scene is to try to reach an understanding about the share of power in the Gaza Strip between the Palestinian Authority and between Hamas. There was a close meeting between Rami Hamdallah and Ismail Haniyeh, and some of the understandings say the following: that the ministers will be Palestinian Authority ministers, mostly coming from the West Bank, but the directors of the ministries in Gaza will be the same Hamas directors that were ruling
doing it thus far.
Exactly. And of course, the big challenge is to try to understand what would be the monopole of the power. The military branch of Hamas yesterday, at the same time of this meeting between Hamas and Fatah, declared that it is opening its doors to new recruitees that are interested in joining the military wing of Hamas, sending a message that we are staying here, we're going nowhere, and you need to deal with us. So there are many problems, many challenges that this government need to take care of, not only vis-a-vis Israel and vis-a-vis the international community, but vis-a-vis the fact that Hamas will not give up very quickly its power in the Gaza Strip, and it would be very interesting to see, for example, what would be the reaction of Egypt. Will Egypt ask that the power, the forces, the soldiers in the crossings between
who are they going to be? Are they going to be Fatah or Hamas?
Exactly. But what the Palestinian Authority is suspecting, in the last days, there were on the ground some measures taken by Israel and Hamas that show that there is a kind of understanding between Hamas and Israel, an understanding that aims to weaken the campaign of the Palestinian Authority to full control of the Gaza Strip. For example, there is a new assignment of an Israeli officer who will be leading the talks about an exchange between Hamas and Israel. Silently, there are Hamas leaders who were in jail, who were in prison after the kidnapping and the assassination of the three Israeli youngsters, who are silently and far from the media released from jails. Third point, 500 to 700 Palestinians were allowed to go from Gaza Strip to pray in the Jerusalem mosques, and these are steps, measures that nobody were expecting.
Not only that, Israel, it's an interesting point. Israel even said it wasn't going to let Fatah members go into Gaza before Protective Edge, when the unity government was announced, and this meeting was actually made possible by Israel because they let those ministers go through the passages. So
the Palestinian Authority says that it is suspecting that Israel will try to put obstacles in front of this reconciliation by strengthening Hamas.
Right, interesting. Ali Waked, always good to have you with us. That's all for this half hour. When we get back, we will hear all about the 2014 Nobel Prize winners that were announced this week, and of course, a look ahead at the Nobel Peace Prize that will be announced today. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. It is still Friday, October 10th, 2014. This is still the morning edition. I am still Yael Avi, last I checked, and thank you for staying with us because our next topic, the Nobel Peace Prize, will be awarded today, and it comes after the Nobel Prize winners in several other fields, chemistry, medicine, literature, and physics, have been announced in the past few days. Always an exciting time of year for us average folk. So in order to examine who indeed is top of their fields, we are joined in studio by our beloved Ruthie Sinai, I-24 News senior news editor. And Ruthie, let's take a look at the following report and take it down after that. Break it down.
Relatively unknown outside of France and a media recluse, Modiano's works have centered on memory, oblivion, identity, and guilt. He has written novels, children's books, and film scripts. The permanent secretary of the Swedish Academy, which awarded the prize of $1.1 million, described the French writer as a modern-day Marcel Proust.
You're always imprisoned. When you write something, you can never know your reader. You have a confused picture of the books you're writing. What I'd love to know is what made them do me the honor of choosing me.
American scientists Eric Bedzig and William Morner and Germany's Stefan Hell won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for the development of microscopy to allow scientists to see molecules inside living cells. Some other noteworthy honorees for the Nobel Peace Prize are Pope Francis I, becoming the first non-European pontiff in nearly 1,300 years. 16-year-old Pakistani schoolgirl Malala Yousafzai nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for her work as an educational activist.
Women are denied.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is also up for the prize after being sworn in as the 8th UN Secretary General on December 14, 2006, pledging to be a bridge builder and to lead a dynamic and courageous United Nations. Author and political activist Elie Wiesel, another winner of the prize, once said, "You would be amazed at the number of doors a Nobel Prize opens."
Joined by Ruthie Sinai, I-24 News senior editor. And of course, I have also with me Professor Friedman. I called you doctor before off air. Apologies.
Oh, of course.
That stripped
if
you
my
of
mother were alive, you'd be in
in big trouble. It's a horrible thing. Can't believe you didn't correct me. Professor Eitan Friedman of the Sheba Medical Center, and you will explain to us in a little while what the Medicine Nobel Prize means. But Ruthie, I have to, confess my shallowness. I have no idea who that writer is.
Well, you're not the only one.
Okay. Who is he?
He is fairly well known in France.
Okay.
Again,
very important.
He's received, the Prix Goncourt and other prizes in France. But outside France, he's little known. He has written his big work. Actually, goes back to the 1970s. He deals a lot. He's an interesting story, and he shuns the media, which makes him more interesting because nobody's ever interviewed him.
About it.
Yes, right. So, but basically, he was born immediately after the First World War. His father was of Jewish origin.
How old is he?
He is in his 70s.
70s, right.
No, 45, 2000. Yeah,
69. After the Second World War. I thought you said First World War. Okay, yeah.
And you see, I'd never win for math. Anyway, his mother was a Belgian actress, and he sort of grew up on the sidelines of the Bohème, the Parisian Bohème, and he wrote books. His big theme is memory loss, identity, self-identity, and so on. His books are mostly kind of thin. 130, 150 pages. He doesn't go in for epics, interestingly, his win is interesting in the sense that it's yet another example, I think, of the Nobel panelists' efforts to once again break U.S. hegemony over, the Western culture.
Because say it. Who's the one who never wins?
Thank you. The perpetual loser who every year gets on the train from Connecticut to New York, goes to his publisher's office, and waits for the phone call.
Seriously?
Only to go home at the end of the day.
Oh my God! Do we know that, or is that like a rumor that he actually gets on the train?
But he's never denied it.
He's never denied it. He gets on the train and waits by the phone.
He's not shy. So
but
anyway,
and Philip Roth, I have to say, I'm sorry, this is a sore point. Amazing writer, definitely, needs to be recognized for that.
He really is, I think, in this case, a victim of this bias.
Of this, we're European. Yes.
European or South American or anywhere else but American.
Except for, of course, President Obama for the Peace Nobel.
No, but I'm talking about literature.
Literature itself.
We had Murakami as a front runner this year, also didn't win.
Well, have you seen his books?
Yeah, exactly. Well, some, not all.
IQ.
I think part of the charm of the Nobel Prize is that you cannot really predict who they will choose.
It's always,
and they try to keep it on our toes in every single field that I'm aware of.
No, in other words, it's not like the Oscars.
Exactly.
The betting agencies.
It was like, I'm not touching that.
Paddy Power and all these British,
And we have no idea. But who else? Who else in the roundup this week of winning it? There was chemistry.
There was chemistry. 2 Americans, I believe. There was physics. 3 Japanese, at least Japanese-born, or one of them is a naturalized American. And literature, we said.
Mostly male.
Medicine, we have an American and a Norwegian couple.
Yes. Who were his postdocs. They worked in his lab.
That's correct. In John O'Keefe's.
And the medicine prize went for what?
It's actually to define which cells in our brains actually allow us to orient ourselves in a recognized environment. So so we know our way around the room, we know our way around the city, and these guys, both O'Keefe and the Mosers, have pinpointed the cellular mechanisms which enable us to GPS ourselves, if you will. It's an inner GPS of our brain that enables us to know our way around in a known environment. And
once they pinpoint that, what is this discovery, this pinpointing? What can it lead to?
It can lead to actually a very simple thing. One of the first manifestations of patients with Alzheimer's disease is unknowing where how to orient themselves. If we know exactly what are the cells and what drives the cells and
maybe we can fix them.
Maybe we can fix it. I mean, it's still many years away, but understanding what are the cellular mechanisms of how we orient ourselves in the environment is really fundamental to understing, and it's well deserved.
Is that for Alzheimer's, dementia as well? Do we think?
Alzheimer's is the
main one,
the major form of dementia. But anything that harms these nerve cells, these specific nerve cells, be it trauma, be it a tumor, be it like a stroke, anything that harms those cells, if we can find a way either to protect them or revive them, which is more promising, then we may be able to combat at least some of the manifestations of devastating disease.
Amen.
And since Nobel's bequest was basically, it was very vague about what he wanted to be done with this prize, what it was supposed to be given for it, but what he did say is benefit mankind, and this is the sort of thing, just like the physics prize, by the way, which is for basically the discovery, the invention of the lead, of the light-emitting diodes, which are the energy-saving light bulbs, basically, that we all know and love. Things on our phones, on our computer screens, and those are also, that's a great discovery that.
I think in medicine and in chemistry and those types of prizes, I have to say that's always fascinating because it's as you said, that's what Nobel wanted, things that can lead to the improvement, to the saving, to the help. But of course, everybody's waiting for today, for the Nobel Peace Prize, which seems to be like the coup d'état. It's like the film of the year, if we are to equate it.
Something people understand better.
Exactly.
GPS in the brain and
come on,
diodes
peace,
and microscopes.
Though I might say peace seems to be a very elusive thing itself that maybe needs to be fixed. Who's up for it this year, and who's not? Let's say who's not going to get it?
Edward Snowden.
God, he's really in the list.
He is on the list. There's
and Obama is not going to get it a second
He's
time.
Not on the list again. He's not on the list.
Because he did so well the first time.
Exactly, because he already got it for the promise that.
I'm betting on Yael's favorite person in the world, who is Pope Francis I. He is definitely a front runner.
I think the little girl from Pakistan is
no,
really...
but
Malala.
You think Malala was up last year as well?
She was, yeah. She was. She
And-
got the Sakharov Prize.
Right, but she didn't get the exactly. She didn't get the Nobel.
Yeah, it could be. Could be.
The Pope, maybe because maybe that's if he wins, and I have to say that I'm betting on him as well. I just think because, and Ruthie and I love discussing the Catholic Church, because he's attempting to bring in reform.
Yeah.
He's doing, there are signs that he's attempting to do it. Granted, it may take 200 to 300 years.
What does that have to do with world peace? That still eludes me. It has nothing to do with.
It's the leading religion,
with
Catholicism.
peace within the Catholic Church.
Yeah,
It has nothing to do with
I
world peace.
disagree with you totally.
Yeah,
But we don't have time to go into
You're
it.
outnumbered.
We
roll.
Apropos outnumbered, I would like to mention the fact that among the Nobel Prize winners, of whom there have been 867, in case you didn't know, since 1901.
And we did not.
Yeah. How many women? What percentage women?
Less than 10%, probably.
Very good.
Oh God, I'm so afraid.
5%. Yeah, there have been, to be exact, 46. 46, of whom one, Marie Curie, is counted as two. No, she's counted as two because she got once for physics and once for chemistry in 1911.
Well, you have to realize that I agree. It needs to be equally shared by women. But you have to realize that until the mid-1970s, women were not allowed to vote in Switzerland, of all places.
I agree. And I think it was until the mid-1960s, and in France they had to have a co-signer on their bank accounts, and they had to be a man.
Let's say the 1980s. What is the percentage from the 1980s?
Still very low. It's still very low. However you look at it, it's low.
Now, one of the reasons...
Yeah, you are.
Then
they should have switched it. I'm saying, I feel the glass ceiling is actually coming lower in our head.
Totally.
Yeah. Totally. So, Professor Friedman.
Yes.
Yes. You are here, though, with the medical corner that we love having.
Yeah.
Yes. Shoot.
Okay. So we know that coffee intake and caffeine consumption is actually good for your health. There's been a lot. Oh, it's excellent. There was a study. There was a huge study encompassing 400,000 people about a year ago, showing that anybody who drinks 4 cups or more, his overall risk for dying of any cause, all-cause mortality, is lowered by 11 to 12% compared to people who do not drink coffee at all. And this is a huge mental change and a paradigm shift, because in the 1980s, people were afraid of caffeine. It's bad for your health. It causes cancer.
Oh, exactly.
It's terrible.
All we've been told. My father was a heart patient. He was told never to drink coffee.
Don't drink water after having watermelon is a fallacy.
Forget it.
Don't swim after you have meat for 3 days. It's a fallacy.
Can I start smoking again?
No, you cannot. That's really bad for you.
Okay.
But some people, there is a subset of individuals who drink, when drinking more than 2-3 cups of caffeine, have like palpitations, have heart problems. And this study actually looked at 120,000 people and have actually mapped out 6 different genes which are associated with adverse health effects of caffeine intake. Why is it important? Not to exclude these individuals, but tell them have a moderate caffeine intake. Don't drink 4 or 6. Drink like 2 or 3 cups a day.
But it is specific. I mean,
those are 6 specific genes.
The rest of us, if you're not part of that gene group, go to town.
Go to town, and it's caffeine. The bottom line is caffeine is very, very healthy. It's really, really an excellent drug. If you have asthma, it's good for you. If you have glaucoma, it's good for you. It's an amazing. Naturally occurring drug.
If you sell espresso machines, it's good for you.
It's good for you, yes. And what else on the
For years, we've been taught that acupuncture is really, really good for you because it's Chinese medicine. Over 5,000 years.
Come on, help me. Break it down. Tell me it's not.
It's definite. Every single study that was done on acupuncture and its effect on anything, be it pain in labor, be it vomiting, be it knee pain, low back pain, it has been negative. This is a study that has looked at knee pain in individuals over the age of 50 with osteoarthritis of the knee, and there's 53% of individuals who had acupuncture and 51% of individuals who had sham acupuncture, have nothing, had improvement. So it helps.
I'm sorry, I'm loving this vindication.
There is a subset of individuals who are being helped by the acupuncture. The acupuncturist.
Of course.
It really, really helps their bank account.
You know, because this is such a high fad, and especially where we're at in Tel Aviv, like I said, the people who go for an acupuncture session for like 300, 400 shekels. Okay, beautiful. Yes.
The origin of the HIV pandemic. I mean, this has eluded scientists for many years, and we've known about HIV since the late 70s, early 80s. But this study that was recently published actually traces this specific epidemic to the Congo in the 1920s, where a primate infected a human, an individual, and from Congo, from the Kinshasa.
So patient 0, Congo.
Yeah, patient 0, Congo in the 1920s, and the spread of that particular strain throughout Africa, where 5% of the individuals in the entire country of Africa, or sub-Saharan Africa, are infected with HIV virus. It all dates because of the spread through railroads. It's an amazing article, and it's like a detective story. We can trace it back, and using novel techniques, if you should read it.
Unbelievable. Thank you, Professor Friedman. So much love having you here. Ruthie Sinai, of course, we're crazy in love with you. When we get back, the new Ghostbusters film. Yes, there's a remake with all-female cast on its way. Maybe we don't get Nobel Prizes, but we will bust ghosts. Okay, first, though, the morning headlines. morning. Thank you for staying with us. I-24 News Morning Edition, the place you just have to be, because this is where you get the spiral viral. I made that up. That is
Right.
the viral spiral, not the spiral viral, the viral spiral.
It's spiraling so fast.
Exactly,
that
the
our
spiral.
word order, our
Dyslexia is a
syntax
horrible
is
disease,
just,
folks. Yeah, but it's where you get the viral spiral that is the web review. Ka-ching. From Tony Grant.
Well,
Hit me.
Yeah, well, I wanted to lead off, of course, with Goop founder Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh, yes.
Now,
That's a great way of introducing her. Goop founder.
yes, the founder of Goop,
Yes.
for all things goopy, rivaling Martha Stewart for her brand of domestic deliciousness. Well, last night, Goop founder Gwyneth Paltrow, she was hosting a fundraiser, apparently.
Oh, yay.
President Obama was in Brentwood, California. And here's what emerged. She said to Obama, "You're so handsome that I can't speak properly."
Oh, come back. I'm sorry, yeah.
Now, you know, she's the founder of Goop. She can say what she wants.
I know, but still, that's a little bit.
It's a
I know
little
she's
bit-
recently divorced.
Well, it's on again, off again with Chris.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, then what was that? They had.
They consciously uncoupled.
They consciously uncoupled.
Now, I will say,
And now she consciously flirted.
she consciously flirted, but she did praise Obama's push for equal pay.
Oh,
And I think
yay.
that is good, but she did not do that with the aplomb that Sarah Silverman has. Because Sarah Silverman has done a video in which she wants to close the $500,000 wage gap.
Yes,
with
and we
women.
have the video
Let's
for
see
that.
it.
It's talking about viral spirals.
Oh, hi. I'm Sarah Silverman, writer, comedian, and vagina owner. Women make up almost half the working population, yet we typically earn just 78 cents to every dollar a man makes in almost every profession, like doctors, lawyers, teachers, miners, and even the oldest profession of them all, tailors.
Yes.
Stuff.
Amazing stuff. And may I say, I concur. No, seriously.
Yeah, no, it is a major issue. I mean, I think
It's a huge issue. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. In the 80s, when this came out publicly, women in the workplace, and Laurent, you will agree with me, came out. So they did research, for example, in a place that I worked in. I wasn't there at the 80s, whatever. A big network in the United States. That women broadcast journalists were making 20% less than their male equals.
Right.
Okay, that was in the 80s. It hasn't changed. Really, it hasn't changed, and it's ridiculous. So more power to
Even
Sarah
they
Silverman.
co-host a show,
Yeah,
like they still make.
And just imagine if that's the United States, imagine worldwide.
Yes.
So again, this is one area where it's nice to see the United States or someone in the U.S. at
Someone.
the vanguard of trying
doing
to
that.
make a change
Yes.
there in a very funny way. Part of the video, it's on YouTube. It's actually not really safe for work, but it's very funny.
Okay.
So I laud that. Speaking of network news in the United States, Piers Morgan, we love.
Who anchored the CNN?
Yes,
okay.
he has penned an advice column to CNN in which he says various things. He says that actually, although he, Anderson Cooper is very
Is replacing
prominent,
him. Yeah.
says that he's stiff.
Nice.
Yeah, which is, he said that he wanted to see someone like Megyn Kelly in that role, who's, of course, on Fox News.
I think we have to remind people that it was, of course, Piers Morgan that had the role before Anderson Cooper. But yes, there's something to it.
And it's interesting to see him write all this stuff in the Hollywood Reporter quite openly, sort of, lightly critiquing, basically everyone. I wouldn't say skewering, but in a sort of British way. So it's
I love
interesting
it. I'm
read.
wondering, though, how much work he's going to get in the States now.
Well, I think he's the editor at large now for the Daily Mail, which is a
Right.
newspaper, which could mean whatever you want it
Anything.
to
It's
mean.
like, we're going to pay you to just use your name.
To write
Yes,
and all that
exactly.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have to follow up on George Clooney's story from earlier in the week. I said that they had been honeymooning in Britain.
In Britain?
Other reports say not so. Some Hello magazine, your one-stop source of upscale British gossip, reports that they are actually holed up on North Island in the Seychelles, where actually Kate Middleton and Prince William did their honeymoon thing.
Because, they're royalty themselves. But you know what I take from this? They're messing with us.
They
are.
Actually, they are. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. But George Clooney is really not in a honeymoon right now. He's already promoting Tomorrowland that I'm going to talk about.
They're so messing with us, folks.
Yeah.
And I think what we can take from this is that we actually don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. But we can ask do we care?
No, I care because if they go to the Seychelles, I want to go to the Seychelles.
Oh my God! Even if they
That
don't go
we
to
care about.
Yeah, that we. If they don't go to the Seychelles, I want to go to the Seychelles.
Have you seen those beaches down there? I mean, the pictures. I mean, it looks pretty fantastic.
I know,
so.
but we're happy here. Come on, look at this.
Yes,
Look at this.
there
We're
are
happy
beaches
here.
in Jaffa.
Yeah, there you go. There's beautiful beaches where we're at. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on.
Rock and roll news.
Of course.
Green Day, Nine Inch Nails, and the Smiths have been nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was announced yesterday. And
I know I say this.
Dramatic pause.
I know, no, dramatic pause. I say this in every show, but this is about me. You know, Green Day. No, I love them, but it's just, how old are we?
Yeah, I mean, the Smiths.
Okay.
Okay,
but Green Day, didn't they like? No, they've been around already.
Very popular, actually.
I love Green Day.
you know, I like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
also, there could be other hopefuls such as Joan Jett and the Blackhearts.
she's not in it already. Travesty.
Yeah. So, and for the third consecutive year, the public gets to vote alongside, industry insiders and that sort of thing. So it's kind of this is going to be happening in April.
Do we trust the public though?
Well, I think it's nice to have the public weigh in, you know.
Because you know what they say about the masses. I'm just afraid that all of a sudden we're going to find Britney Spears there.
I think she's safely recovering
Okay.
from her live act in Las Vegas.
And
Bugatti, a famous Bugatti car in the news, making the rounds on Facebook because someone despoiled it. In Seattle, of all places, this car is worth like $1 gajillion. It's the Bugatti Veyron, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, Grand Sport, which can go from 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. It's like $2 million or more. So someone drew what it looks like. Oh yeah, they drew that on it. Now, it's kind of a slap in a way to the owner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is
a star. It's a shooting star.
It's a shooting.
But the crazy thing is that, you know, who has that?
I'm sorry, I'm stuck in the shooting star because I think, have you ever said that to a man?
Who drives?
Just came to my brain.
Let's
Is
be
that your
analytical
shooting
here.
star?
Let's be
You're just happy to see me. Sorry,
Absolutely.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to know who drives the Bugatti in Seattle.
And there's somebody who goes to the Seychelles.
So maybe George Clooney is actually in Seattle. Yes, talk about a hideaway.
Good one, exactly. But you know what I like about what they painted there? Because you know what they say about people with big cars and flashy cars.
Well, exactly.
Compensation.
I mean,
compensation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yes.
Anyway, nice car. The rich kids of Tehran scandal. I'm sure you've heard about this.
Yes.
You know,
Great story.
Yeah. Well, speaking of rich kids and their toys, this actually was causing a bit of a flap because the people that were behind this popular Instagram account, Rich Kids of Tehran, they told Business Insider that they were aiming to improve their country's public image. Now, I don't know, I think 1% of the population of Iran gets something like, all of its resources or something. I don't know. There's a lot of
Which
poverty
sadly
there.
goes to for the rest of the world nowadays as well.
Iran is like no exception to that. But apparently the account the pictures were deleted once it started to go international, and then I think maybe now it's online, but in a different iteration. But again, pretty interesting and controversial at the same time to see those images.
It's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that is something that is going on still. The other day, early in the week, somebody tried to escape from Florida in an inflatable bubble. Yeah. Now, the Coast Guard got a report of a U.S. citizen floating in an inflatable bubble, making his way toward Bermuda. Now, I mean, most people, if they want to escape Florida, will try for an airport. But because
Sorry, Ray, you're ruining
the highway.
There's some women in the studio with makeup. I gotta say, I love that, trying to escape Florida. But you and I know, Tony.
Yeah.
You and I know that when you've been in Florida for too long,
you'll try anything.
Yes. Exactly.
If you see a bubble nearby, you'll try to crawl into it and get the hell out.
I'm going to swim my way out of here. Yeah, now.
No, but they got sharks in those waters. Florida leads the United States in shark bites?
Really?
Yes.
I mean, listen,
there's more sharks.
The sharks know what they're doing with all due respect. I just got to say, yes, okay.
Anyway. In deference and homage to the beautiful French lady in our studio, news from Paris.
News from Paris, and then real quickly because we're moving.
The Eiffel Tower has a new glass floor.
Ooh. Really?
Yes, on the first floor.
Thank God.
Yeah, there's 3 stages to the Eiffel Tower. So this is a renovation that now you can kind of walk over part of Paris and, throw up to if you get.
And its population.
And its population.
You can
throw them crumbs, let them eat cake.
But no,
interesting stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Okay.
fun stuff if you're going to Paris.
No, definitely, and not if you're afraid of heights. And speaking of which, we have the beautiful cinema correspondent for I-24 News, Leticia Lorani. Leticia.
Yes.
Yes, speaking of France and fascinating though, and film news. What do you have for us?
I have actually some news from David Fincher's new movie, Gone Girl, which is topping at the box office kind of everywhere in the world. If you didn't hear about it, it's that new thriller starring Ben Affleck, where he's missing his wife. And everyone kind of feels sorry for him at the beginning, but then eventually we're going to start to suspect him
That
of
he might have
something
killed her.
that it might, probably have killed her. This movie is killing everything.
How much has it made
well,
already?
it's already made almost 40 million in the first week. The movie cost 60 million to make. That's only in the United States. To tell you the truth, I haven't seen the movie yet, but
It's all over the social network.
All over the social
It's everywhere.
network.
It's everywhere.
It's absolutely amazing. When we had such a horrible summer for movies, American movies, the blockbuster went down. No one kind of moved to go to the movie theater this summer. Well, this is kind of like making
and the fascinating you said to me off camera before we went to the studio, it's interesting that this is a thriller. This is not a blockbuster with a bunch of snazzy, effects.
Yeah.
This is actually a thriller, and it's making so much money already in the first week as if it was a huge blockbuster. But I think I know why.
Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck, supposedly there's also a scene that for a sliver of a second there, you see some of his, how should we call it?
Oh, that's why you tell.
Exactly. There's like a
Full
small
frontal assets.
It's nice, full frontal. And I don't know. So apparently there are a lot of people around the world that really wanted to see.
Well, they want to see this, and they'll probably, and they also kind of want. The reason I think why all of those people are going there. First of all, David Fincher is bringing people, the audience in. He's the director of the Social Network, which was a massive success.
Seven.
Also, which this movie is apparently kind of similar in the way Seven was made, and also in this type of movie, you kind of want to go before everyone is spoiling the story
and telling you because there's a big surprise, a big reveal,
massive surprise
at the end.
I'm asking everyone not to tell me. Kind of everyone that starts talking to me about.
Too bad, because I already know what it is, but never mind. And I didn't even see it.
You see.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So that's for Gone Girl. That's going to have some kind of a big competition this week, but still it's going to top the box office, I'm sure, this next few weeks.
And
what else? A big news for Ghostbusters fans. It's been a while. We were waiting for these Ghostbusters number 3. Well, surprise, Ghostbusters 3 will exist, but we'll have a casting full of women. Apparently...
Sigourney Weaver?
Sigourney Weaver? No. But it will be a casting that will... Bill Murray will not be in this reboot, because it won't be a sequel or prequel. It will be a reboot of the original Ghostbuster, and Bill Murray is very for this project, even though he's not going to be in it, and he recommends Melissa McCarthy, Emma Stone,
Melissa McCarthy would be great,
Kristen Wiig, and Linda Cardellini for
it's
the
almost
lead.
The cast of Bridesmaid, the movie, fabulous
which is
movie.
a movie directed by the same director, Paul Feig. And who mentioned that his favorite thing to do is to work with funny women.
Right.
No, and I wanted to ask you, Tony, who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters. Louder.
You weren't born. Something I love saying to people who sit in my office. Come on, you weren't born when that thing was.
There's something strange in your neighborhood.
Actually, we're going to watch that right away.
Yeah, do we have that clip? Come on, don't we have the clip? Please, I can't believe we're talking about Ghostbusters.
There's something weird, and it don't look good. Who you gonna call?
People understand that we were jiving to this.
The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man?
Yeah, the marshmallow. Will they bring back the Marshmallow Man?
As a woman.
As a woman.
There's going to be a
with
lot
boobs.
of puffage.
Yes, yeah. Have it blow up in the middle of New York. Ah, love it.
What I hope is that they will still shoot it at the same caserne, how the fireman place that still exists in New York.
Please help your girlfriend here.
The-
Thank you. Exactly. I know.
Yeah, they're so picturesque.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And
Quickly,
functional.
quickly, last one, really quick.
Well, last one is the first sneak peek at Tomorrowland, which is a kind of a enigmatic movie starring George Clooney. That's why I told you. I know he's not in a honeymoon. He's promoting the Tomorrowland movie. I guess we don't have the
We'll
time
take
to
a
watch.
look at this. Yeah, well, let's see. We'll
maybe
take a look.
quickly.
Take a look. Come
It's
on,
exclusive.
Siv.
It came out yesterday.
No way.
A miraculous place where you could actually change the world.
Okay, yes, I'm gonna definitely watch that. Guys, folks, ladies and gentlemen of the press, thank you. And that is all the time we have. Of course, do not forget to check us on the web, Facebook, Twitter, I24 News, Morning Edition, the place you have to be, because that's where you meet all of us. And of course, tune in Monday morning to start your day with another edition of the Morning Edition, I24 News. Have a great weekend.
There's something weird, and it don't